The first deck I decided to use was this deck with the Goblin Barrel arrows as the main spell and the Mega Minion and the Witch as air defense. I didn't think the air defense was enough. I thought it could be a little bit more because one time I played against Electro Dragon and it really didn't work out well. But as you can see here, there is. I kind of have a good cycle. It's not that quick, but I can work with it. In Goblin Barrel decks, you want cheaper cards, so you can cycle to your Goblin Barrel faster. But I think it's fine in this deck. But as you can see, I've got a lot of Swarm cards to keep the Prince in check. My Mega Minion is enough to deal with an Inferno Dragon. And the Evo Barrel just really works with all the tanks this deck's got, or mini tanks, should I say. Like the Goblin Cage, the Mini P.E.K.K.A., the Mega Minion. I do think that the arrows are not enough of a spell. I feel like this deck does miss a big spell, definitely for the spell cycle, because with this deck it's hard to get consistent tower damage. That's why I would put in something like a Fireball to push this deck and make it even stronger. But as you can see in this game, I've just been cycling barrels, and in this game it definitely worked. And the Witch and the Goblins have been completely stopping the Prince. My Mini P.E.K.K.A. has been killing the Valkyrie. The arrows just do a good job at dealing damage to troops. Not completely killing them, but dealing just a lot of damage or doing the final hits. And just like this, I cycled back to my arrows one last time and won my deck. That's why I'm gonna give this deck 6 out of 10. Because I think it's a solid deck, but it lacks a big spell and some solid air defense. This second deck has a double evolution, and I personally think it's really balanced. The Goblin Drill works well with the Witch. This matchup you can see here was pretty hard, because countering minor wall breakers is possible with a Goblin Gang, but if he puts any kind of splash card, it's gone. But as you can see here, the Goblin Drill can work well with the Witch. You have a tank counter for this Mega Knight, the Mini P.E.K.K.A. You have few splash cards, like the Valkyrie, the Witch, and the Log. You have just some a cycle card called the Skeletons. I don't know what the Mortar adds to this deck though. I would maybe replace it or with a big spell, or a defensive building. Because I personally think if you're up against something like a balloon, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. Because let's say Lava Loon, you don't have the air counters to do it, and say with something like a Tesla or a big spell like a Rocket or a Fireball, it would be much easier. So I'd probably add that instead of the Mortar. I do like this deck though, mostly because of the synergies it has. I really like this minor prediction, just knowing it was gonna go to the mortar. But the mortar did do something in this matchup, but I still think just leaving it out would be a good play. For the rest, I think the Evo Skellies work really well in this deck, especially with all the tankiness that's going on. As you can see here, they are just taking a tower because I tanked for them with a Goblin Drill. So that's also a synergy I think is really good. And I really like it's in this deck. It has a lot of solid cards. It can counter basically anything. I would just change the mortar out, something good in. That's it. I give this deck an 8 out of 10 because the synergies are really good, but I would never be able to do something if I went against Lava Loon. So putting some air defense or a big spell in or building could really help the deck. Okay, so this next deck is an absolute mid-ladder menace deck. It has a Mega Knight, a P.E.K.K.A, Executioner, and I just see a few big flaws in this deck. The first big flaw I'd like to point out is you don't have swarm cards. The Goblin Barrel is a swarm card, but when you have to use a Goblin Barrel on defense every time you need a swarm card, I know there's something wrong with your deck. The Executioner, Arrows, Zap, Mega Knight, definitely enough splash. Inferno Tower is a good tank counter. Inferno Tower, Executioner, good air defense. I see a few synergies. You have a few tanks for the Goblin Barrel. If you split your Mega Knight and your P.E.K.K.A, your Evo Barrel definitely does a lot. If you use Arrows and Zap with a P.E.K.K.A, you can probably get some good damage as well. So I see how this deck would work. The only problem is it's really, really, really expensive. For example, if someone has an Inferno Tower and a mini tank, I think you don't do anything. Because it just counters your whole deck. I think I would put in a little more cycle cards. Maybe take out the Battle Ram. Because as you can see, I used P.E.K.K.A Ram, but let's say someone goes P.E.K.K.A opposite lane and they have like bats to counter my Inferno Tower. I really can't do anything. I think I was really lucky my opponent gave up. But this deck can work if your opponent doesn't really pay attention. So I think that's also how I won this game. I give this deck a 7 out of 10 because we don't have enough to counter a P.E.K.K.A if we used our own P.E.K.K.A. And we do want to use our P.E.K.K.A because that's where most our synergies are. I would probably take out the Battle Ram and put in a cycle card just so we can cycle a little bit. But it is a good deck to catch your opponent off guard when you played already a P.E.K.K.A and then you just play a Mega Knight and they don't know what's going on. This next deck doesn't give me a lot to talk about. It's just the cheapest deck possible. I chose Suspicious Bush because it can get some damage, but against something like a P.E.K.K.A, you just can't do anything. You can play swarm cards, but eventually it's just too much to handle. I got a bit up in damage, but then he just started playing cards, and I couldn't really do anything. With perfect play, I maybe could have won this game, but it's almost impossible. You really don't have enough air defense, nothing. You don't have tank counters. The only thing you can do is just play and pray. It's just really annoying when Barbarian Barrel is your only half solid air defense. So I just try to use Sussy but I can't do anything. And this opponent just takes me down by just playing Mega Knight, and that's enough. I couldn't do anything for the whole game. Lost. And that's it. I couldn't do a thing. This deck was very torturous to play, so I'm gonna give this deck a 3 out of 10 because it can get worse, but you really can't do anything unless it's really specific what your opponent has. And it isn't even fun to play because when your opponent is a good player and can counter your cards, you just can't do a thing. And the winner is Cartoon with his Goblin Drill Witch Evo Mortar deck. It was really interesting to play this deck, and there were a lot of synergies, so great job with it. And that's this video. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you. See you in the next video.